Russia will be held accountable if it invades. And it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, et cetera. Who in the Lord's name does Putin think gives him the right to declare new so-called countries on territory that belong to his neighbors? This is a flagrant violation of international law and it demands a firm response from the international community.
Two very different sound bites there. One, a month ago, the president saying Russia would be held accountable, but it depends on the size of incursion.
Yeah, the other one calling him out on taking more land. Joining us now to discuss is spokesperson at Turning Point USA and author of this book, Frontlines, Isabel Brown, joining us live. And editorial director at the Reactionary Times, that is Julio Rivera. Also tax attorney at Walser Wealth, Rebecca Walser. Good to see everybody here. Julio, I'll start with you on this one. You know, you can compare and contrast the statement made from the president back in January versus the one that he made yesterday. Those two key words, minor incursions. Your thoughts?
Well, you know what? It proves once again that America leads the international community. And if America leads in a very weak posture, then, you know, ruthless dictators are going to go ahead and take advantage of that. You know, if you contrast the military under President Trump and Joe Biden, I mean, you know, in the last year, we've seen Lieutenant Commander Matthew Lohmeyer, I believe was his name, get dismissed from his post at Space Force for not wanting to promote critical race theory. And then we see a lot of, military, a lot of the branches of the military are pushing the sensitivity and diversity training and all these other things, this woke agenda, which I think projects weakness as our, enemy combatants in other countries size up what the United States is doing currently. All they see is weakness. So, of course, it wasn't just the comments that Joe Biden made, because we saw Russia go a little bit too far with Crimea, obviously under Barack Obama. These are things that never occurred under Trump, because there's a difference between saying it depends on whether it's a minor incursion and then the language that Trump used against North Korea, talking about fire and fury, the likes of which the world has never seen. So it's definitely a big difference.
Yeah, and of course, we all recall sort of the quick response that the White House had to put out to clear up the confusion about the president's own comments about a minor incursion. We've even heard from Ukraine, you know, any invasion, no matter the size, is an invasion. Let's take a look at some of the sanctions that have come out since the invasion. This has to do with blocking to financial institutions, sanctioning certain elites and oligarchs. Germany also halting Nord Stream 2. Isabel, your thoughts on these sanctions? Do you think it could deter Vladimir Putin from further invading?
Unfortunately, I don't, and I'm glad to see some sort of action coming from our federal government, but the tone has already been set from the Biden administration when it comes to Russia. Even during the campaign, our president was tweeting that he would be the only candidate to ever go toe-to-toe with Vladimir Putin, and now we've become the laughingstock of the world, because I think Julio really hit the nail right on the head. We are leading from a soft approach. We are not leading from a position of strength as the leader of the free world, our nation. And therefore, the international community is not responding to the level that it should if Russia truly is planning on fully invading Ukraine. But I find it interesting that now the administration is somewhat trying to cover their tracks. Obviously, we saw them greenlight that pipeline way back when in May. Over and over again, we've seen them not pay attention to significant problems coming from Russia affecting the rest of the world. And now that it's somewhat politically unfavorable not to take some sort of position on Russia, you see that strong fist of leadership start to come out of the Oval Office. So make no mistake about it. This is not about foreign policy. This is about political polling and the administration knowing what the backlash will be from the American people if they fail to act.
Well, it's true. You don't have to be a foreign policy expert to watch what happened when Germany halted the certification of Nord Stream 2. A few hours later, a tweet from the White House, oh, we support that. But they weren't first to call Germany and say, hey, you've got to stop this, at least not on public record anyway, that we know. And then UK came down with their sanctions, other countries, and then we walked out with the president of the United States of America with sanctions. Julio, you brought up a great point. Compare and contrast the former president versus this one. Here's the White House press secretary on that.
So there's a bit of a different tactic, a bit of a different approach, and that's probably why President Biden and not his predecessor was able to rally the world and the global community in taking steps against Russia's aggression.
Now, I believe Trump spoke with the New York Post yesterday, and I'll show you that if we can. I believe Trump said that during his presidency, if you move against Ukraine while I'm president, I will hit Moscow. It is said that Putin reportedly said no way, but nothing happened during Trump's presidency, as we know. What is the difference in leadership there, Rebecca?
You know, Sean, it's a mutual respect of the power and the strength of each gentleman, right? And I just don't think that that is the respect that Putin has for this Biden administration. Paskey's got the worst, severest case of cognitive dissonance I've ever heard of from a press secretary, listening to one thing and saying the exact opposite, as if the American people are dumb and will buy it. We're not dumb. We're starting to question. And, you know, I want to bring in just a really quick financial situation here with these sanctions, Sean. And that is the fact that we have to step back for a moment and look at the fact that Russia is buddying up to China like we have never seen before. And if China, with their digital currency, the yuan, goes forward, which we know it is, and Russia starts using that system, we won't be able to use our SWIFT system to actually impose these sanctions. So we have to start looking at these two global superpowers and their arrangement and start wondering what's going on here.
Yeah, we saw them meeting, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, at the Beijing Olympics. So we don't know the exact details of the conversation here, but appearing to be friendly with each other. Panelists, if you could, stay with us. Still more to cover.
We just want government overreach to end. On behalf of Freedom Convoy USA 2022, we are asking you to end the state of emergency, end the mandates once and for all. Sir, the world is watching us, because they know that if what's happening in Canada happens to us here in the land of the free, then freedom as we know it is gone.
So what you're seeing there is the leader of the Freedom Convoy USA 2022 demanding change in Canada, warning that it could happen here. Now, he's part of one of the 3 trucker convoys, reportedly up to 38,000 people that will head to D.C. In time for President Biden's State of the Union address.
Yeah, meantime, the Pentagon's set to deploy hundreds of National Guard's troops. This as fences are being set up around Congress. Let's bring in our panelists to weigh in. Their thoughts: Isabel Brown, Julio Rivera, Rebecca Walser. And Julio, we'll get your thoughts to this American trucker convoy. We've, of course, seen this play out with our neighbors to the north in Canada. It's remained relatively peaceful in Ottawa. What are your expectations for stateside?
Well, I think it'll remain peaceful here, but I think it's more important to recognize the reason why they're doing it here. You know, I think that we've been living under the illusion of freedom in even the United States for decades. And I think that what we're seeing in Canada really illustrates how, you know, very quickly, you know, with the power of the government and the military, you know, leaders that go a little too far can engage in this type of dictatorial sort of behavior. And, you know, what they're trying to do now is we're getting to the point now where I think we're coming out of the pandemic. I think that you're even seeing blue states lifting mandates and restrictions. We need to get back to normal and get back to the idea that Americans and people all around the world in free countries are actually free, and, you know, that these mandates aren't just being lifted now for political reasons because there's an election coming up.
Isabel, your thoughts on this, too. Truckers headed to D.C. reportedly. You've got fencing going back up around the Capitol for the State of the Union. Now you have reportedly hundreds of National Guard troops going to be on standby, deployed in and around that area. As you see the trail of where these truckers are reportedly set to go and how they're going to get there. Your thoughts on calling up the National Guard for this?
Julio mentions it's important for us to go back to normal and protect freedom in the land of the free. But sadly, I think the idea of fencing around our congressional buildings, of deploying National Guard troops to Washington, D.C., and even taking away civil liberties with the stroke of a pen is unfortunately the new normal in the United States, especially in the wake of January the 6th. We've all been so alarmed watching what's happening in Canada, with individuals seeing their bank accounts and finances seized, old grandmas walking on the sidewalk being trampled by police officers, and even organizers of truly peaceful protests, not riots and looting all over the country, being denied bail and facing lifetime in prison for exercising their right to freedom of assembly. And I think people haven't really connected the dots quite yet that this is absolutely possible in the United States. The Emergencies Act here in the U.S. also gives the President of the United States in our country similar powers under a state of national emergency, which, make no mistake about it, is what a freedom convoy of truckers would be declared immediately in the United States once they get to Washington, D.C. And so I think things are only going to get worse before they get better. But the good news is ordinary citizens from all over the world, teachers, truckers, nurses, parents, they're starting to stand up and demand their freedom once more. So it's time for each and every one of us to send a message to the government. You work for us, not the other way around. We have a government for, of, and by the people. And that hopefully will bring us to an actual normal of protecting freedom and liberty here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, again, these truckers, they just want to have conversations with the politicians who have been elected in their respective countries here. And Rebecca, if you think about just the context of it all, it has been 2 years that we've been living under mandates from politicians, some of which have not followed their own mandates being put in place. It also comes at a time when we are seeing mask mandates being lifted, those vax mandates changing depending on where you work, possibly. You know, is now the time to rethink these conversations and actually acknowledge the frustrations that people have been experiencing?
Yes, you know, Julio is 100% right. We are living now for the last 2 years under the illusion of freedom, probably going back even further than that. And so this is good news. I agree with Isabel. This is exactly what's happening. We are losing our freedoms stealthily through this emergency necessity that people are willing to give up their freedom for safety and security. And Ben Franklin said, if you give up your liberty and freedom for security, you'll have neither. And that's exactly what's happening. We have to remember, we have enshrined a fundamental constitutional right to redress our grievances to the government, and that includes the right to peacefully assemble. I am shocked and offended that they are going to go ahead and start calling up the National Guard and the troops in, you know, on American citizens that haven't even arrived yet because they are trying to stop what they're afraid will happen in Canada. We have a right to redress our government. This is an awakening for the world, and we're all joining it together. Thank God.
Isabel Brown, Julio Rivera, Rebecca Walser, out of time, but great discussion with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.